You know what would help make our lives complete? A SpongeBob Christmas Carol with Mr. Krabs as Scrooge, and a Simpsons Christmas Carol with Mr. Burns as Scrooge. Wouldn't that be excellent? Mickey's Christmas Carol, directed by Bernie Nashville and is the 1983 Disney short that is also the first of the three Christmas Carol adaptations. And you don't need me to tell you the story because if you haven't heard the story of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, have you been living on Mars or something? Because it's only Charles Dickens' most celebrated story, a story everybody brings up at Christmas, and there are only a million movie adaptations of it. The first Christmas Carol movie I reviewed was The Muppet Christmas Carol back 4 years ago, and I'm surprised that I didn't review my other favourite version of the story sooner. Mickey's Christmas Carol is not only the first Christmas Carol movie I ever saw, so this was my personal introduction to the story, and it's the pitch perfect introduction to this story for a kid who was my age back then, and Mickey's Christmas Carol is the best Christmas Carol movie, and nobody can change my mind about that. Sure, it's easy to think such a detailed book from the 19th century by Charles Dickens would be impossible to tell in just a 30-minute movie, but Disney proved all of the doubters wrong with this film. Sure, this movie will not be Charles Dickens' purists' cup of tea, as they will prefer the longer, far more accurate and faithful adaptations to the book. But if you're like me and can accept changes to the source material, you will adore it. This movie cuts out so much from the source material. It misses out this movie cuts so much out from the original novel. They don't go to the school, they skip the school entirely. They cut out the part where Ghost of Christmas Presents shows Scrooge what Fred does on Christmas Day. They don't even include the sellers selling some of Scrooge's belongings after his passing with the Ghost of Christmas Future. Yet I'm all right with that. So as come on, were those things really necessary to the story? This movie includes the most important scenes of the story. It's one of those Christmas classics where the charm lies in the simplicity and less is more in this case. And all of the Disney characters are the most lovable and endearing versions of the classic Charles Dickens characters. Bet you every penny that Scrooge McDuck from DuckTales was created by Disney so he could one day play Scrooge in a animated adaptation of A Christmas Carol, and Alan Young as a Scrooge is my number one favourite Scrooge. There, I said it. The movie never makes him too unlikable, and still gives him plenty of warmth, and he has the most hilarious lines of any Scrooge I've ever seen. My partner Jacob Marley, dead 7 years today. Aye, he was a good un, and I had him buried at sea. What's she cooking? A canary? Why'd you bring me to this old shag? And what I said doesn't even scratch the surface of his lovability, which helps us 100% buy his change of personality in at the end, going from a Christmas hater to Christmas lover. He's even generous enough to let Bob Cratchit go home 2 minutes early. Has any other Scrooge ever done that? No. That's why, for me, the Disney adaptations of A Christmas Carol get the biggest pass because they brought magic and hearts and warmth that other more serious adaptations are seriously lacking in. I mean, would you rather a Christmas Carol that makes you go ah, or a one that gives you no pleasure watching it whatsoever? Mickey Mouse is tied with Kermit as the sweetest Bob Cratchit that they could have possibly gotten, and of course, Minnie was inevitably going to play Emily Cratchit, and their kids, little Minnie and Mickey are squeezably sweet, and of course, Tiny Tim. This is the cutest Tiny Tim I have ever seen, and he's not even in the movie for that much. He probably only gets like 1 to 2 minutes of screen time. Yet in that 2 minutes alone, God bless him, he will melt your heart more than any other Tiny Tim, and Donald is delightful as a Scrooge's nephew Fred. He goes around with a wreath and challenging Scrooge's humbug with his catchphrase "Merry Christmas" in a contest. I am shocked they didn't include Daisy in this movie though, as Clara, Fred's wife. I think she could have been a nice addition, but of course they only had 30 minutes to tell it, so it's fine. We can just imagine that she's there. Saying that, Daisy does play another character, Isabel, Scrooge's girlfriend, before he rejected her in favour of his gold in his past. And it is awkward seeing Daisy, a far younger character than Scrooge, hiss on him, but she's still a beautiful and a pure sweetness in the role. And as the Rassie and Mola from Disney's uh, Wind in the Willows even make a appearance as the charitable donators who are collecting for the poor. And this movie makes a clever deviation from all other adaptations. Most to have Scrooge say, "Oh, are there no prisons, no workhouses? I wish to be left alone. If they'd rather die, they'd better do it and decrease the surplus population." But not this movie. Instead, it has Scrooge say, "If you raise money for the poor, they won't be poor anymore, will they? And if they're not poor anymore, you won't have to raise money for them any longer, and you'd be out of a job." So, I mean, it's still crueler to say, but this movie is comfortable doing its own thing. I just love its confidence. And lastly, with the characters, we've got Jacob Marley and the Three Spirits. And they freaking nailed the character casting with Goofy as being the clumsiest Jacob Marley. And the funniest moment in the movie is when he trips down the stairs. Scrooge is like, "Marley, watch out for that first," and Goofy trips and does his classic, "ah, oh, ha, ha, ha," and he's like, "Step." Jiminy Cricket's being a charming little ghost of Christmas past, far less creepier than other versions, thank goodness, and even the Toad from Wind of the Willows makes a cameo as Fozziwig for just like one shot. The Giant from one of the most incredibly underrated Disney classics, Fun and Fancy Free, makes a jolly ghost of Christmas present. Don't forget the chocolate blackberries with yogurt. and and this movie has the darkest version of the Ghost of Christmas Future by far. Crazy Pete as this character is spot on casting. I would be perfectly happy if Crazy Pete always stuck around to play the villain in a Mickey Mouse motion picture. And the Ghost of Christmas Future stuff is the most rushed part of the Three Spirits, but it does the future stuff more perfectly than any other version that I have ever seen. Period. In just that short time alone. I mean, impressive or what? And yes, they do kill off Tiny Tim. I mean, this was back when Disney was not afraid to challenge children's emotions and topics of death and loss. This movie doesn't sugarcoat anything with Tiny Tim's death, and all the other versions of A Christmas Carol I've seen have had the Cratchits in their house talking about how much they missed him, but this one actually has them sitting by Tim's grave. Emily walks the kids home, and there are tears gushing down Bob's face, and he puts a Tiny Tim's cane by his gravestone, so that's presumably Tim's funeral. I'm like, damn, that is powerful. And there's not even a single line of dialogue in that moment, but the emotional expressions were all you needed to convey the pure sadness of what the Cratchits are going through. I am surprised that no other version has ever done that. And when we get to the part where Scrooge sees his grave, Crazy Pete takes off his hood and he's like, "Why, yours, Ebenezer, the richest man in the cemetery." He pushes Scrooge into the grave, and this is the darkest moment in the movie. Scrooge's grave opens and hellfire's coming out, and Scrooge falls into the grave. He's like, "I'll change." It may be more happy-go-lucky tonally than other adaptations, but it is not afraid to have balls at the very end. And just like the Muppet Christmas Carol, it also has the ending which I prefer to the original book, when Scrooge goes to the Cratchit house instead of seeing Bob at work the next day. It also has the most wonderful soundtrack of A Christmas Carol movie, which is just steaming with Christmas spirit, especially the opening and closing song. Oh, what a merry Christmas day! And it's beautiful how the illustrations in the opening credits are just like the illustrations in the original Charles Dickens novel. So overall, Mickey's Christmas Carol is in no way, shape, or form too short, despite what some may say. It was the first Christmas Carol movie I ever saw, and will always be my favourite.
I give Mickey's Christmas Carol 5 stars out of 5. Best movie ever.
So now I've reviewed both my favourite Christmas Carol movies. You don't even need to ask me if I'm going to cover the 2009 Jim Carrey one and all the others. One Christmas I will get to them. Well, I love you guys. Thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. And what are your thoughts on Mickey's Christmas Carol? Is it your favourite Christmas Carol movie or not exactly your favourite? Please comment and let me know. Please like this video and subscribe. Please follow me on Instagram. And I'll see you all next time when I review Spider-Man No Way Home. Going to see it this Saturday, and my spidey sense is tingling. It's gonna be amazing. And remember, movies are us. Bye, guys.